Vine was sleeping peacefully in her bed, together with her husband Jungkook in her embrace, safe and protected. She woke up when his arm jerked suddenly, jerking her body, making her realize it had been the cause of her wakefulness. His breathing changed, getting heavier, his hand tightening slightly on the side of her ribs. Vine tilted her neck back, trying to see his face but only able to make out the silhouette in the darkness. His fingers spasmed on her flesh, his breath getting shorter. Vine recognized the signs, having experienced them herself on numerous nights, but she had never witnessed anyone going through a nightmare. She wondered what his subconscious was showing him. With the brutal life he had led, most of which she couldn't even bear hearing about, she knew she shouldn't have been surprised by this. Swallowing, her heart clenching, the desire to soothe him acute, she slowly placed her hand on his forearm. No idea what to do, she went with her gut. Tucking her head in, she pressed her lips against his heart, feeling scarred tissue under her mouth, and softly kissed it while stroking his arm. A low noise rumbled in his chest. His body twitched.
Shh, Vine whispered, pressing soft kisses on his chest.
She stroked his arm over and over again. It's okay. You're safe. It's okay. His body tensed. Vine patted his arm, nuzzling into his neck and murmuring the same words repeatedly into his skin. Minutes passed, and slowly, eventually, she felt his strained muscles loosening up, the grip he had on the side of her lips easing. Vine spoke against his heart again. You're safe. It's okay. Leave the bed next time. His raspy voice whispered against her hair, having not expected him to wake up. Vine tried to pull her face back, but his hand came up to the back of her head and held her exactly where she had been. She settled in. Not happening. I can get dangerous, he informed her, as though the thought had never crossed her mind. She wasn't an idiot. Vine rolled her eyes but stayed silent. I'm serious. His somber tone poked no argument. I can seriously hurt you and not know it. She shrugged. I'll take my chances. A frustrated noise left his throat, and Vine tilted her head back, bringing her hand to the side of his head. The sensation of his hair between her fingers amplified in the dark. It's been 3 days since their marriage, but obviously they have slept together before their marriage too. 2 times. But it never happened before. This is the first time she witnessed him having a nightmare. The first time she witnessed him miserable. He always acted tough and highly of himself in front of her, that she would sometimes forget what it must have taken him to get here, to be the ruthless mafia. It wouldn't have been easy. It shouldn't have been. She stayed with him just like he always did. He never left her side, making her promise last night. Never again. You will never feel unsafe again. No matter the circumstances, I'll never leave your side, never leave you alone. He made her that promise when the enemies invaded their house yesterday, and she was scared as hell. But he kept her safe with all his life. You made me a promise last night in the dark, she murmured softly, knowing she had his full attention. I'm making you one now, brushing her thumb over the line of his jaw, feeling the scruff rasping against it. She vowed, repeated, His own words. Never again. You will never be alone again. No matter how bad the nightmare gets, I'm going to be right here. Her words echoed in his ear and heart, making him swallow as he looked at her, and kept looking. His breathing didn't change, but his fingers flexed a bit on the back of her head. She knew what this meant to him. She could imagine all the emotions swirling through him, including the most dangerous one of all, hope. Dare he hoped that she meant it. Dare he hoped, after everything he had been through, that he was still capable of hoping. She could imagine, because that was exactly the thoughts she would have thought, and they were similar, she and him, two sides of the same coin, two ends of the same string. She knew what giving his vow meant to her. There was no looking back. Break that promise, he spoke, his soft voice as the underside of the blade, and I will break mine and destroy you afterwards. Her heart beating faster as the awareness of him shifting closer seeped through. He tugged her head up, arcing her neck back, his nose brushing against her.
His lips were right there against hers, almost there but not quite. Her face straining closer to bridge the gap, but held back by his hand in her hair. She smiled, knowing he could feel it between them. Destroy me. The dam burst. His lips crashed against hers in the most beautiful collision, knocking the breath out of her lungs. Everything from their previous nights came flooding back to him. His love, his possession, his relief of having her. And he immediately forgot about the things that were the reason of his nightmare. All the emotions he felt, she could feel it all in the way he kissed her. It was a sensation of reassurance and promise of being together, combined between his lips and hers. Her arms wound up around his neck, pulling him deeper as he shifted her completely on her back, his much larger form covering hers as he moved his weight on his arms, their tongues twining. His taste infiltrated all her senses. Wine reveled in the complete, absolute sensation of holding him, and having him hold her like that for the first time. Tugging his lower lip between hers, she ran her fingers down his muscular back, feeling all the tattoos and scars under her touch, stopping at his very well formed back. She spread her legs wider to accommodate him, pulling on that sculpted back, pulling him in the valley between her legs. A low rumble vibrated in his chest, right against her breasts bubbling harder against his flesh as he devoured her mouth, his boxer clad hips flexing against her bare front. The t shirt, the only garment she had gone to bed in, was suddenly pushed up under her neck. Her breasts, naked breasts, pressed up against his bare chest. Wine moaned at the sensation.
Her nipples becoming even more sensitive, shooting heat right to her core. He pulled back, his chest heaving hard against hers. Their breaths labored. He spoke, slight wonder, slight disbelief in his tone. Yeah, she felt that too. This whole situation could be encapsulated in that one. A loud vibration from the bedside table spiked her already rapid heart rate. Wine looked at the source of the noise to see his phone vibrating madly on the wooden surface. She turned back to look at him in the glow from the phone to see to see his wild, disheveled hair and the most magnificent eyes focused on her with an intensity that made heat flood her body all over again. The phone kept vibrating as he moved his hips with deliberate intent, applying the perfect pressure. Her head sank into the pillow as her back arched, her fingers digging into his back. The vibration stopped, plunging the room into darkness again. His mouth came over hers again. She parted her lips willingly, letting him in, her heart pounding as he slowed them down. A wet spot on his cotton from her, his head stroking the side of her breasts. The phone vibrated again. He pulled his lips away, his hand extending to the side to pick it up and bring it to his ear. Speak, he growled on the phone, his eyes still on her, his hand playing with her hair. He turned off the phone after a couple of seconds. The call was about some mafia related business again. Who was it? She asked curiously. I need to deal with a traitor, he said in a tone too soft for the situation. Are you going to kill him? Her eyebrows hit her hairline as she asked. He smirked and kept looking at her for a few seconds. Why? Are you getting scared of me? He said while smirking. You don't scare me anymore, Mr. Mafia. She replied, her voice breathy, her tone the same as her husband, playful. Anymore? So you admit that you used to be scared of me. She stopped, skipped some seconds before speaking. Okay, I do. Even though I never showed it on my face, I admit that I was scared. When I first met you, when I first talked to you, when you looked at me with those hunting eyes, as if you were going to eat me. You were scary, she said, cuddling him, smirking. I know you were. Her eyes widened when he said that. But I never showed a single expression on my face. How did you? Jungkook scoffed. He pulled her closer, their lips almost touching each other. He whispered, Nobody can resist me, baby girl. If I want them scared, they will be, even if they show it or not. He growled, right on her face. His lips curled into a smile as he looked into her eyes, with the same intensity as he used to, the hunter's eyes. She smiled for a brief second, and then looked back into his eyes, the same intensity as his, not scared of him anymore. I don't want to, but again I admit, I so cannot resist you, Mr. John, she said while wetting his lips that were so close to her mouth. He smirked. His nightmare almost faded away. He didn't even remember he had one. He just stayed with her, making her fit in his embrace, laid there, and he could do that for an entire lifetime. He finally realized how blessed he is to find her, to have her in his life. He almost had a tear in his eye, but he didn't actually. He patted her hair. I love you so much that words cannot explain. She tried to look up in his eyes, but he pulled her head in his embrace. He didn't want her to look at him, not while he was about to cry, as he never did in front of her. She smiled, respecting his decision, and closed her eyes until she slept again in his protective embrace.